Yerasimos, how's it going?
Going well. How's it going?
Awesome, man. Good to see you again.
You too.
Yeah, so thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. So real quick, Yerasimos and I recently connected on Facebook, and I saw a video that he did talking about transformational bodywork. And I had never really heard about it before. I didn't know a whole lot about it, but it was very interesting to me. And I reached out, we connected, we just kind of chatted, and I thought it would be really good to bring him on so he can share what he does and share some of the success stories that he's had with his clients with you. And also, I like learning about this stuff too, so it's a bonus for me since this is a topic that, like I said, I know very little about. So, Yerasimos, I know you're in Switzerland. You want to tell us how it's going over there?
It's going well. I get to look at beautiful mountains every day. We've had a couple pretty big snowstorms in the last week, so that's kind of been nice. I live in Santa Monica most of the time, so it's a little change from the Pacific Ocean.
Oh, awesome.
But it's been amazing being here with my fiance, my little puppy, and yeah, things are good.
Awesome, awesome. So are you a skier? Have you been doing any outdoor activities there?
You know, I am a skier, but we've kind of just been getting settled in because we're going to be here for a few months. And the plan is next week, hopefully there's some snow, we're going to do some skiing. So
awesome.
I skied a bit when I was younger and didn't for 20 years, but Sophie and her family skis, so when we got together, I got back on the slopes. I wiped out a few times, but I was good after that.
That's how you learn, man, right?
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, so Yerasimos, why don't you share your story of how you got into doing what you're doing today?
Okay, well, there's a bunch of twists and turns. Oh, look at that little pup. I wish I had Rosie with me right now.
We've got another guest today too. This is Z.
Yeah, obviously, like, interject if I'm like taking too long or I'm sharing too much. But I guess, let's see. I've always been interested. I wouldn't say always, but once I got into my early 20s, I was really interested in personal growth and why are we the way we are and why are we here and you know, who am I? Those kinds of like questions. But to start off earlier, you know, I had and these are things that I realized as I went through my own healing process. You know, I had a traumatic childbirth. I was born a month premature, emergency C-section. My mom, when I was in her womb, I wasn't getting the nutrition or nutrients. And so when she went into the hospital, the doctors informed her, well, after I was born, that if I was in her womb, I think for another few hours, I would have died.
Oh, wow. Just from lack of nutrients.
Yeah. There's something else as well. I'm not really sure the whole thing, but that's a story I got from my mom who, you know, my parents both came to this country from Greece. So I'm first generation Greek American.
Okay.
They're immigrants. So, you know, when they were here and I was being born, they didn't understand the English language at all. So they were, I can only imagine what they were.
That must have been really tough. Yeah, being in that situation and just not being able to communicate very well.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So, you know, having that kind of childbirth, and I also, you know, the doctors at that time, they informed my mother not to breastfeed me for whatever reasons. I guess during that time, formula was starting to become more and more popular, so she was informed that it could be dangerous to me at that time.
Wow.
So,
unbelievable.
Yeah, pretty wild. So I developed a lot of ear complications as a child and ended up having a few major surgeries at age 5 years old and 8 years old to remove benign growth behind my eardrum.
Okay.
So, you know, those surgeries were pretty traumatizing.
Yeah.
I didn't think that at the time, but again, you know, you hold on to some of these memories in the physical body.
Right.
So I think, like, I guess let me get back to, I think things really shifted for me when I started studying to be an actor. I was in my early 20s.
Okay.
And I'd always been kind of fascinated with storytelling and the human condition and just, you know, the connection between human beings. And when I started studying, I was introduced to the works of Doctors Hal and Sidra Stone. And I think you mentioned it in my brief bio. And they developed a system that kind of looks at, why your personality developed, why you are the way you are. And from an acting standpoint, I kind of went into my training looking to dissolve away or release or separate from, let's say, conditioned patterns of behavior so I can integrate more of who I am. So ultimately, I can be a more whole person, but from an acting standpoint, I can empathize and play lots of different characters because I'm more in touch with more aspects of myself.
Okay.
So that kind of process really got me fascinated with like the psyche and our mental world and our emotional world, and why does my personality develop? How does my environment impact the development of my personality? How does the behavior of my parents impact who I am and who I become? So it, that kind of planted a lot of seeds, and I read a lot, and I sat in contemplation, and I explored my triggers, the things that were triggering me and why were they triggering me. And I thought all that work was great. And then I got real interested in also the role the body plays in one's health. So, and I think you might have gone to the Institute of Integrated Nutrition as well.
Yes.
Did you study?
I did.
So I was curious there about, I guess over a decade ago, was curious about the connection that food has with our mental and emotional state.
Okay.
And I used to do these experiments. I'd eat really, really cleanly, and then I would indulge the most unhealthy foods just to see how it impacted me.
Like what kind of stuff? Like nachos or pizza? Like what are we talking about?
So I grew up in the diner business. My father owned and operated a traditional New Jersey Greek diner for 35 years in New Jersey. Yeah, in Jersey. So I was living in New York City at the time and getting, really into health and how do I eat and eat cleanly, real foods, whole foods. I would go back for a weekend and just think of the most, trans fat, because that was probably still legal.
So you gorged on diner food, basically.
I gorged on diner food.
Okay. Well, Yerasimos, real quick, it's so funny you say that because, I went to college in upstate New York, and every Greek person I knew that I went to college with, their parents owned a diner. And we had a couple diners in town, and some of the diners were run by Greeks too. But, Greeks, know how to run a diner. And that food is great. I don't recommend eating it all the time. But anyway, back to your story.
No, I hear you. Listen, the Jersey is known as the diner capital of the world. I know New York's very close, so you get it. I understand. And so I was living in New York City at the time, and I would come back to New York City after a week of just gorging unhealthy food, and I'm not shitting you, depressed, questioning my life decisions, wondering what was the point of anything. Like I felt like I was in an apathetic state, like my energy was just really down. And this is just from what I put in my body. Said just, but it was very eye-opening to me. And so, after doing that a few times, I just got more into health and nutrition. And then,
hey, I spent some time. So real quick, what do you attribute your kind of early awareness to that to? Because, for me personally, I probably did that for 20 years without realizing it. I knew what healthy food was, but at the same time, I would gorge on unhealthy food. And there was a part of my mind that kind of knew it made me feel like crap, but I just did it for years and years and years. So what kind of opened your eyes to be like, let me pay attention to this earlier in your life? Hey, real quick, thanks so much for checking out my video, and I hope you're getting lots of value and learning some cool stuff. If you're having challenges with your health, I can help. The main thing I help my clients with is improving their energy at the cellular level. So I'm talking about your mitochondria. And what we know from the latest research is that 85 to 90% of all disease is caused by poor mitochondrial function. So when you fix your mitochondria, you improve your energy and everything gets better. If this is something that you'd like help with, there's a link to my calendar in the description below. Go ahead, you can schedule time for us to talk. And if it looks like we're a good fit, I'll tell you about my program. And if it's something you want to do, we can start working together. I look forward to meeting you. And now, back to the video.
You know, it's tough to say. I want to say like my own intuition, but that's a word that gets thrown around, that there was just a feeling and a knowing that this isn't right. I want to also attribute it to there may be some genetic elements. Like my parents, my mom grew up in the mountains of Greece. My dad grew on an island in Greece. Like they weren't, you know, they weren't eating really, really unhealthy processed foods. You know, I think, you know, my lineage started experiencing this unhealthy eating coming to America and getting a taste of the standard American diet.
Yeah. Your DNA just knew this wasn't right. It was used to like fresh pressed olive oil and, you know, fish caught out of the Mediterranean Sea and fresh tomatoes and all this stuff. And now you're eating like French toast and, you know, factory farm
sausage
bacon
and ice cream. I mean, I used to have Belgian waffles with chocolate ice cream on top with 2 links of sausage for breakfast every morning in junior high school.
Oh, nice.
Crazy. Thank God I had a fast metabolism, so it didn't show too much, but it definitely showed in my mental state and my ability to focus and my probably reactivity levels for sure.
Okay.
So anyways, to make a long story short, you know, my curiosity drove me to the things that I studied, the books that I picked up, the traveling that I did. You know, I spent over 15 months backpacking around the globe just because I was curious how other people lived and and what their belief systems were and how I could maybe perhaps learn something from that. But then things really shifted when I made the decision to leave New York City. I was kind of tired of city life, and I moved out to Los Angeles several years ago.
You're tired of city life, so you moved from New York City to LA, another big city.
Yeah, another big city, but LA has that feel where it doesn't feel as big as New York City because, you know, you don't have buildings that are like 50 to 60 stories high, like surrounding you everywhere.
Right.
So yeah, I really enjoyed being in more sunshine. And shortly after moving to LA, I was introduced to this guy, Christopher, who's an ex-Navy SEAL and alternative healing practitioner. And he talked about his work that he did with clients. And I was really, really interested and fascinated by it. And I did a training with him, and I went through like a really, really deep process of doing this kind of work that I'm going to talk about, you know, in a little bit, all day, all night for a certain period of time. And I came out of it feeling completely transformed, and my level of presence shifted, my ability to focus changed, how I took in information around me in my environment, things slowed down. So with all the other things I did, with the workshops I did, with the reading I've done, and all these other things didn't shift me in such a sustainable, permanent way as going deep into my body and taking out stress, taking out, helping release toxicity from my cells, trauma that was stored in my body. I mean, like lots of emotional release too, emotions coming up that curious where they're coming from, and with no story attached to it, you know, like 20, 30 minutes of weeping and crying, and with not even like, oh, well, it's because I went through a breakup or my father or my mother. It was just a release of, you could call it energy, emotional energy. And again, I was fascinated.
Yeah. And how old were you at this time?
At this time, I was 30, 32, 30, 33.
Okay. So you were releasing emotions that were 33 years old because it really started pre-birth.
I would agree with you 100%.
Okay.
Definitely. Like our tissues, our nervous system stores our experience from, I'd like to say, from in the womb until we're born and throughout our entire life.
That's fascinating.
So it was, I was kind of hooked. I really loved kind of supporting and helping people, and to really kind of connect with and I guess explore these tools in this way. It just kind of gave me, I don't know, I really I was really excited about what can come of this.
Yeah.
And continuing my process and
Mm-hmm.
supporting others in this process, because people have gone through a lot of trauma. I mean, trauma is a fact of life. I mean, to be human is to experience trauma.
Right.
And now there's really extreme traumas. There's excessive stress and day to day that builds up. And I think the body behaves as a hard drive that stores your life experience, your history, repressed emotions. And until we can't just tackle it from our mental space, from analysis, from talking about it. We have to integrate the physical piece as well.
Okay. Hey, so you're asking us, I would ask you a question, and then I'll let you go on and talk about these actual techniques. But it makes sense to me why humans hold on to fears, right? Because if you go back several hundred thousands of years, fear kept you alive. If you weren't constantly looking over your shoulder, there were all these predators, whether other humans or animals, or just, all sorts of dangers killing you. But why does the body hold on to trauma like this?
Well, first of all, I think we can take a bit of we can look at animals, for instance, in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
And now when animals, they go through a traumatic process, or they experience a trauma, shortly after it, they go through this unconscious automatic process where they tremble and they shake and they discharge this excess survival energy, this fight or flight, as you want to call it, fight or flight energy.
Yeah.
And they're able to go on and experience their life as an animal, and maybe they've gained some awareness from it, but it hasn't really affected them in such a negative way moving forward.
Okay.
Human beings, unfortunately, don't always allow themselves to have that unconscious traumatic kind of reaction where they go through a trembling and shaking process, because first of all, it's looked upon as weak.
Right.
So their mind gets in the way of stopping them from going through that process of shaking, trembling, showing their fear. Now, if they allow the interesting thing is, if they allow themselves to go through that, it would impact them in a much more positive way. And they've done some research that post-traumatic stress symptoms are, I would say, much more minimal when a person allows their body to do this. Now, a lot of people aren't able to do this. A lot of times people are in surgery and they're fighting and they're getting strapped down and they're unable to go through this process, or they're in an accident and they get picked up by a paramedic who's like not creating a safe space for them to even go through this process. They're like treating them like an object, screaming at them like, "Are you okay? What's going on?" Like, there needs to be a safe container for a person to be able to unleash this energy that has built up. Does that make sense?
Very interesting. Very interesting. And there's a name for that, right? That trembling response?
I've heard of it, just trembling, quaking, quivering. A lot of it's can be subtle, like real subtle, like vibrations of feeling.
Yeah.
The exact name's not coming to me right now.
Yeah, maybe it'll come to one of us in a minute, but yeah, I have read about that, and just from people being self-conscious, right? They repress this thing, and yeah, it's right. Society makes us so afraid to be human and to be weak, and just after a lifetime of repressing this, it just builds up in our bodies. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, okay. It definitely does build up. And, I think I can speak at it from a masculine standpoint. We're raised in our culture to like not show weakness, to be strong, to work through it, to fight through things. And so when we experience these kinds of things, are we allowing our body to have that natural kind of unconscious process? And I can think back to a couple instances in my life. One of my earliest memories is being wheeled into the operating room to get my ear surgery. And I had the thought in my head, be strong, be strong, be strong. And I had the nurses telling me, wow, for a 5-year-old boy, you're just so brave and you're so strong. And I was fighting against feeling this kind of fear.
Yeah.
where I think allowing myself to go through this process and to feel those feelings might have had a different impact.
Yeah.
And the
Well,
same thing goes for when sorry, you were saying?
I was just going to say, it's so amazing. And like you sharing that story is causing emotions to kind of well up in me, because it's bringing me back to my childhood when I was trying to be tough. And I have like a huge problem crying. And it stems from being a little kid and being kind of like a wimpy little kid, crying a lot and just hating the fact that I would cry. And then years and years of repressing that to the point where it's like very hard for me to cry. But there are like moments where, you know, you just kind of like triggered a memory, and it just, you know, welled up all of these emotions in me. So at some point I might have to have you like work on me, and, you know, I'll probably have like years and years of tears come out. But anyway.
I feel you, brother. No, I feel you, man. I was actually just going to say, I'm going to have to come out to, you're in Ithaca in New York?
Yes.
I'll have to come out there if you find yourself in LA, and we'll definitely do some work.
Yeah, totally.
But this happens, I mean, this is happening all the time, constantly in life, when a person gets bad news, go through a breakup, and very often, I haven't mentioned this, is people medicate these feelings as well. So when they should be going through that process of feeling the fear or feeling those emotions of hurt or anger, you know, these survival emotions, they're going straight to a cigarette, or they're going and getting a drink right away, or they're having sex, or they're eating certain foods, whatever the case may be. So again, they're numbing a process that ultimately would help them in the long term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And it seems like we're seeing more and more and more of that. You know, we've got this whole opiate epidemic right now. You've got just people hooked on all different things, and it seems to be getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, I agree. And as you know from everything you talk about and that you share, there's such a multitude of factors that are impacting this. I mean, it's very easy to try to point to one or two things, but most things are nuanced and factorial, if that's even the right word to use. And
yeah, totally.
And so, you know, when we talk about health, when we talk about healing, I really think it's important to tackle it from many different angles. And the body is the one piece that that I think is really important and has been ignored traditionally in an integration process and a healing process. And, you know, research over the last, I don't know, however many years is proving that, you know, the mind and the body, they're not separate. You know, they're interlinked, they work in synergy. So your mind's going to affect your body's going to affect your mind, et cetera, et cetera. And now you can make shifts in your mental state that are going to impact your body. I personally feel bypass the mind, go directly into the body, see what comes up. I think it has a really powerful, sustainable, and a much more permanent effect.
Okay. So Yerasimos, can you share, so what does like a session look like with you? What do you do?
Okay. So in a nutshell, I support people to take out trauma, stress, excessive tension, toxicity that's stored in their body, stored in their nervous system, and in their life, depending on what comes up. Mm-hmm. But one of the main modalities that I use, it's a technique where I use my feet with deep rhythmic pressure and walk on different parts of the body that correlate with the Chinese meridians. Are you familiar with the Chinese meridians at all?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so traditionally there's 12 main energy channels in the body. Mm-hmm. And, you know, again, much more modern research is starting to see that these meridians lie in the connective tissue, in the fascia. And so I would say that what happens is a person's lying on the floor, mm-hmm. On a mat, you know, in a really nice, quiet, safe room. And I have a walker that I use for leverage. And I literally walk on.
So you don't have like your full body weight on them, so you can kind of support yourself?
No, I have my full body weight, but I use the walker for just balance.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, so I'm like, I place the walker over a person's body and I get on top. And usually I start usually I start with the backs of the legs
Mm-hmm.
and the hamstrings and the calves.
Okay.
And that's for one reason is the backs of the legs correlate with the bladder meridian in Chinese medicine. It is the largest. It's the largest meridian in the body. It has the most points in the body. I guess people that are familiar with more anatomical terms or Thomas Myers anatomy trains, it correlates with the, I believe, the superficial back line, the bladder channel. And the other thing about the meridians, and this is why I was really drawn to this work, is because while I love the physical work, I love the psycho-emotional component of it as well.
Okay.
So different meridians, certain meridians are more emotional, certain are mental, certain are physical, and other ones are more, let's say, energetic or spiritual. And so the bladder meridian is an emotional channel.
Okay.
And again,
so you start with the emotions first.
I start with the emotions first because every meridian also has its own high qualities and low qualities that are associated with it.
Okay.
And so the high quality of the bladder meridian is emotional honesty. So really getting to a place where we can get a person emotionally honest with themselves, with others, is a great starting point for a transformational process, in my opinion. And so what happens is I'll start walking on a person and I'll ask them this question. If 10 is pure pain, 1 is pure pleasure, and 5 is neutral, meaning there's no pleasure, there's no pain, it just feels like someone's walking on you, what's your level of comfort or discomfort?
Mm-hmm.
They'll tune into their body, they'll give me a number, and I have them breathe relative to the sensation that they're feeling. So what's different from this modality, this technique from a lot of more conventional body work is that I engage the pain. I go directly in the pain, though I have a person breathe relative to what they're feeling. So one way to describe
that a little bit. So what does that mean relative to the way they're feeling? So if they're feeling a lot of pain from that, how would they breathe?
They would breathe deeper and faster.
Okay. How about if they're feeling how about if they feel pleasure, then how do they breathe?
They're natural breath, but they're aware of it. I like making this a conscious breathing process because people can sometimes get lost in their thoughts. So I think bringing the awareness back to the emotion, to the breath, and the emotions, because the breath is part of the emotional world, I think is really, really important. So I try to describe it to some people. I go, imagine getting walked on while you're doing Wim Hof style breathing. If you have higher pain levels, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And the breathing serves multiple functions. You're oxygenating the system. I would say, retraining the nervous system and creating more of a healthy dance between the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems.
Okay.
But most importantly, I think what's happening is the breath lives in the emotional world of a person, and the physical body is what we're working on. So we're integrating the emotional body with the physical body. So I don't want to get too out there.
Yeah.
But just imagine like different aspects, different parts of a person, and we're connecting the two. And that's, in my experience and from my personal experience and from my experience with working with tons of clients, that's where some really powerful stuff happens. That's when repressed emotions come up to the surface to be experienced and released. That's when memories can come up to the surface. And, it happened to me, and it happens with my clients where, you're breathing while you're getting worked on the hamstrings, one-on-one, or 2 feet on one hamstring for a few minutes at a time. We're focusing on certain areas. It's not just like, oh, let me just go through and move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
We're really focusing on certain parts.
Very interesting.
And emotions come up.
Yeah. So, you said memories come up. So, like, are you talking completely forgotten memories from like years ago that they had no idea existed? And they're just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
This happened to me, and it's followed by emotion. Does it ever look like that?
I'll tell the story to kind of, bring a little bit more clarity, but you're right. So I was working on a client once, and first time her coming to me. I can't see, are you frozen?
You just froze up for a second.
No.
Can you see me now?
Yeah, I can see you now.
Okay, it was kind of funny because you took a sip of water and it froze, and I was just like, wow, he must be really thirsty. That's like a long sip of water.
I love it. I am kind of thirsty, but it's all good. So I had a client come see me for the first time through a referral. Again, it's everyone that comes to me is through a referral basis.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I started working on her. We went through the process of the backs of the legs, and then I flipped her over and I started working on the sides of her legs, kind of like anterior front part of the quadricep and IT band area. And her pain levels were really high, you know. And again, I won't work on someone full body weight if they're telling me they're at a 10.
Okay.
Like, there's to a certain degree, you know, I don't want to make it overly traumatizing. And if they're unable to breathe relative to what they're feeling, I have to put a lot more weight. I have to take weight off of them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I was working on her, and she was doing really great, deep breathing, and you can see emotions start coming up. And so emotions started coming up, and then she started weeping, but it's in this kind of undulating, like weeping and heaving. It's a different kind of cry. Until you experience it, it's hard to explain.
Okay.
And so she, you know, when that usually happens, I stop, I get next to a person, I'm holding a safe container, I'm holding space for them to allow them to go through this process.
Mm-hmm.
And so when things settled a little bit, she started talking. I kind of just checked in with her, and she let me know, she's like, the memory of, she had gone through sexual abuse from a very young age.
Okay.
For about like several years. And so her conscious mind had thought that she had dealt with this process. Like,
right.
Oh, I've handled that, I've dealt with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yet her body held on to, well, her body held some of the memories, but the one thing I haven't said yet is after some of this crying, her body started shivering and shaking.
Mm-hmm.
So what we talked about earlier, this discharge of energy,
right,
was happening, let's say 30, 35 years later, that maybe didn't happen because of a habitual abuse experience.
Mm-hmm.
And another reason too is, you know, the body holds on to this physiological experience of fear, even though the mind thought, hey, you know, I've handled this, I've talked about it perhaps in a therapeutic setting. And so, you know, when she went home that night, she said she had the most like deep and vivid dreams. She was able to sleep like deeply through the night. A lot of, let's say, she was able to come to a place of forgiveness too with some of the things that went down with her parents over the situation.
Okay.
So again,
wow.
This ends up being like a deep release of energy that had to be done through a physical process.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
getting aware of certain sensations and going deep in the body.
Wow. Yeah, I can't wait to try this out. I'm very kind of intrigued by it, and you know, I want to experience it for myself and just, you know, see what I'm holding on to.
Yeah, no, I get it, Nathan. You know, most of us humans, we hold on to stress, we hold on to pain, we hold on to trauma to live in this world, to get along in our family system, to function. But ultimately, if we hold on to this, it's going to impact our relationships. It's going to impact our work and our career.
Yeah, for sure.
And it
impacts every day of our life when you think about it.
Yeah.
And it impacts you from being you. You can't experience like the fullness of yourself if you've got all of these trapped emotions inside you. So let me ask you this, you know, something I work on with my clients a lot, one of the first things is helping them to become aware of their limiting beliefs and then replace them with a belief that's going to help them. So I don't do any body work, you know, it's more kind of, you know, conscious, subconscious mind and the whole mind-body connection. But something I've become aware of through reading and also from working with clients is people become addicted to negative emotions, like drama, for example. So do people also become addicted to trauma?
I I think there's similarities there. Like, I think there can be moments where a person is, I don't want to say attracting, but reliving some of those traumatic experiences.
Okay,
because
so
of what's
being
held in the
addicted
body.
to the memories of trauma?
Yeah, memories or the feeling, or how do I say this? It's what feels normal and natural to them because it's a part of who they are.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like, there's people who have dealt with so much stress and so much trauma that, like, a positive feeling, and I don't really tend to like to talk about feelings personally in like positive or negative. I just kind of feel like they are what they are. They're energy patterns. They're in us. And so they feel more uncomfortable if they're having a happy day or if something good is happening to them. They don't know how to process that. Their nervous system, things are, red flags start getting thrown off.
Right.
So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, pretty much. So can you share another kind of story of you working with somebody, maybe a little different than the last story?
Let's see. A lot of the stories end up being a lot of emotional release, and it doesn't mean emotional release is necessary to have a successful or a powerful result from this kind of work, because by nature some people are more emotional than others.
Right.
So while a lot of emotional release can happen, let's see this. I had how do I explain this? Again, it's interesting. A lot of the time it's a first session a lot of times where a person hasn't experienced anything like this. And there's this just huge aha moment. I was working with an older gentleman once, and we went through this process, but we're also doing some of the resistance. I'll talk about that later. There's some resistance work I do where I take muscles and their associated fascia through like isometric, concentric, and eccentric contractions.
Okay.
In simple terms, it's like you're strengthening the body, stretching the body, and through this stretching process, we are, let's say, dissolving or reshaping dense fascia and scar tissue.
Yeah.
And opening up energy to flow through these channels, opening up pathways for blood and lymph to flow smoothly through the body.
Yeah.
And so we had done an entire session, and I don't want to get into this too much, but I do like a more esoteric element of what I do is a verbal energetic process where I have people dialogue and talk directly to their body, their brain, and the nervous system.
Okay.
And so throughout this entire session, this guy who had real difficulty experiencing his feelings and his emotions, when the session was done, after a session's over, I asked people to kind of stay in tune with their body and to walk back and forth in the room and just see what they notice.
Okay.
Locate 3 things that feel different than when they walked into the room before the session, just so they can gauge and get a sense of, okay, this is what I'm feeling now. Like, what's my physical awareness? And this guy he got up and he leaped on me and gave me a hug with like the most vulnerable, like open, like I felt like I saw the depths of his soul, like thanking me, even though it wasn't, I don't really take responsibility for this. It's a co-creative process. I'm not one to use the word healer. I help facilitate healing. We work together in a session, but
right.
he just felt like a piece of him opened up that had been locked for 30, 40 years.
Wow.
And that's the kind of stuff that, like, it's why I love doing this work. It's
that's fascinating. Hey, so is there
really powerful?
Is there kind of like a recovery period or a healing period? I don't know what you call it, a transformation period when something like that happens?
Yeah, you can I call it like an integration period, or
Okay.
a person's transformational process or healing process, is that I give people some instructions on like what to do to take care of themselves. I usually recommend when a person works with me for the first time to not have anything to do after.
Okay.
Like, take the time for yourself. I
Right.
live close to the Pacific, so a lot of times I tell people, if you have the time, take a little walk to the ocean.
Yeah.
If the weather's nice, get your feet in the ground, get grounded,
Mm-hmm.
have the sun shining on you, and kind of come back to the moment. And I also let them know that there's a potential over the next few days, sometimes a week, for other emotions, because we've gone deep into the body, other emotions to bubble up into the surface.
Okay.
So
like a few days later, they might all of a sudden just start kind of crying and just have
crying
this cathartic moment or something like that.
Yeah, and the other thing is this: if a person represses their anger, if a person represses their fear, and we go into these deep channels in the body, into the tissue, in a real transformational process, you kind of have to walk back out the door you came in. So if you spent a lot of time repressing, those emotions sometimes, to a certain degree, need to be felt before it's transmuted or released from the body. So people right after a session might feel super present, super relaxed, very calm, and yet later in the day, the next morning, they may be more reactive, angry, more fearful. And I want to let people know to be aware of this and to nurture themselves however they can. Feel your feelings. Take a nice bath. Lay in your comfortable bed. Don't distract yourself from what you're feeling. And even more so now in our culture, we have distractions everywhere we look. I mean, we just go straight to Facebook and Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
We turn on Netflix. People go straight to pornography. They go eat 16 cupcakes. I mean,
right.
It's never ending.
Yeah.
So to be able to sit with your emotions, I think, is really powerful and necessary.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point. I'm always experimenting with different things on myself, because before I teach it to my clients, I try to I see how it works. And the other day I did a new kind of meditation where you kind of release. You ask like the universe to help you release a quality that you don't like, is not ideal, and to kind of replace it with something more energetic. And later that day, like a very small thing kind of set me off. I was just like really freaking pissed, and like it just totally overcame my body. So do you think that was just kind of like my body releasing some deep, some emotional anger that I had been holding? It was really weird, because it was just, but at the same time it came up and I was just trying to like repress it, instead of just kind of, maybe I should have just been like, what is this all about? And just kind of been more present with that, rather than trying to like fight it and be like, no, you can't be angry. That's not the person you're trying to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And it happens to me all the time. And it used to happen even more so as I was going through this process, going really deep into my body. I mean, I would say just last week, right when we got to Switzerland, I had my fiance. She's trained in this work as well, but she focuses more on the academic side right now. But I had her work on me, and just for like 30 minutes working on different parts, like focusing on the calves. The calves hold a lot of pain. We didn't get there. I didn't talk about that, but I work on the hamstrings and the calves. The calves are no joke. And so she was working on my calves and my forearms as well. And again, different meridians run through the forearms, but we won't get into that. And just 30 minutes of that. And I got up, and like a nervousness came over to me. I felt really, really exhausted. I felt irritable. These things that very often we keep down underneath the surface, because we don't want to be irritable. We don't want to be nervous. These feelings we're ashamed by, whatever the case may be. And I ended up like taking a nap for 3 hours on the couch. I was out. Like I was in like this little cocoon with a blanket, and it was necessary.
Right.
And the other thing that I notice with a lot of clients, imagine your body in life. Most people are running on a lot of stress hormones. Okay, that's what's keeping them going through the day. They're not using like a natural source of energy. It's like stress from life, or from coffee,
people are
from
addicted
sugar.
to cortisol and adrenaline, right? And that's why like you can get addicted to these negative emotions because they're giving you a source of energy, albeit a not very healthy source of energy chronically, because it's aging you faster than you like, and it's causing pain and inflammation and all this other bad stuff. But anyway,
you're spot on. And so with this work, when you take tension and stress out of the body, your body realizes how tired it really is.
Right.
Like when you release this stress, when you discharge this energy, your body goes like, I'm done. I'm tired. And it happens often. I have a few clients who, when I'm done with them, done working with them, and I like to end my sessions, because this work is really intense and deep, I kind of like to end my sessions with some more subtle energy work on the head, cranial work, or work on the feet. And I have people who are out. They're snoring. They're
really
past exhausted. And, I kind of let them, depending on timing, I let them kind of snooze a bit, and then it's time to wake them up. But I recommend go get some rest. This is where the conversation sometimes comes on, well, what are you eating? What's your diet like? What's your sleep like? What's your connection to light? What's your connection to earth? What kind of water are you drinking? All these different things that you speak about, and all the people that you interview come on and talk about, are super, super important. So
yeah,
anyways,
very interesting. Hey, so real quick, I see. Do you know Ryan Gavlik by chance?
I don't know Ryan Gavlik.
So Ryan, he's a personal trainer out in Hollywood. So you guys should hook up. But it's really interesting that you say the calves hold on to a lot of pain. Because I did a live with Ryan, and he was walking through different exercises. And one of them was kind of going through the calves. And I never realized it, but I was like, wow, my calves are super tender. And I realized, there's like a lot of stuff going on in my calves. So I find that very interesting. But you two should connect, since you live relatively close to each other. Not right now, since you're in Switzerland.
Yeah, but, I'll be back in the summer.
Very interesting about the calves. So Yerasimos, before you were talking about some of the other body work that you do. Is it like myofascial release? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I would say as an overall umbrella, I'm really focusing on the tissue.
Okay.
Myofascial release, even from the walking modality, what I call it the soma stomp technique, because soma comes from the Greek word body, and we're kind of stomping out this stagnation. And then the resistance work is really about, again, working with the muscles and the fascia, and breaking down that dense fascia, and opening up energy channels, having blood and lymph move much more freely through the body. I didn't really talk about this because I want to simplify, I guess, how I talk about this work. The work is rooted in traditional Chinese meridian theory. And the Chinese, they have, in its most simplistic form, they have a belief that, or a saying you could say, where pain exists, there's no flow. So think of the body as having 3 rivers. Okay. The blood, lymph, and you can say qi, as the Chinese call it, or electromagnetic energy, bioelectricity, those 3 things. So when there's pain present in a person's tissue, one of those rivers, or those rivers, aren't flowing in the most optimal way.
Okay. So is it possible to have just one of the rivers blocked? or is
Yeah.
it usually all three of them, or a combination? Like, how does that work?
No, it can be a combination. Usually when it's a electromagnetic kind of stagnation, the pain could be more dull and achy.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's blood stagnation, it could be more fixed and stabbing.
Interesting.
Make sense?
Yeah.
And remember, the calves hold a lot more pain because think of gravity too. You know, we're walking, we're standing. That, you know, our body think of like sediment in a glass of water. It's gonna drop to the bottom.
So as you're standing, everything's just kind of settling, and it collects in the calves.
Gravity has its effect in that way. So the calves, okay. I see Ryan said, got to roll out the calves. Definitely roll out the calves. I recommend to a lot of my clients and friends and family, especially in between sessions, is to get after your tissue. Whatever tools you can find.
Yeah, just to keep those rivers flowing, right?
Yeah, keep those rivers flowing. And from let's say okay, so think of it this way too, from like a physiological standpoint in terms of how we think about disease. Growing up, when people would talk about camping, if you're going to be out in the woods, hiking, camping, and you're going to collect water, they say collect it from a running stream and not a stagnant pond. Because in a stagnant pond, there's more opportunity for like bacteria, virus, disease to manifest. So think of the body in that similar way. If these rivers of energy are flowing, there's more opportunity for health.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Less stagnation. And that's in its simplest forms. I'm sure you could get into it much more scientific, but that's it in the simplest form.
Very interesting. So, you know, going back to the meridians, I want to ask you a quick question. So I've got this thing, it's called a GDV camera. So have you heard of these?
Wow. No.
So basically, you know, you stick each of your fingers in it, and it takes basically it measures your biophotons, which are just photons being released from your fingertips, and it maps it to the energy meridians in your body, in your organ systems. And it can tell you like your different energy levels. So I'm always doing these different biohacks, and it's one of the tools I use to let me know if what I'm doing is increasing my energy or not doing anything, or if it's going in the wrong direction. But one area that I'm consistently off in is, I don't know the exact name of the chakra, but the root chakra, is that the chakra right at the very bottom, the sacrum?
Yeah, it's the root chakra.
Okay. That's always off.
Okay.
So what is that? Can you tell me, what does that say about me?
Well, I don't really work with the chakra system too much.
Okay.
I'm sure. Yeah, it's actually an area that I do want to study more. I have a very limited understanding of the 7 chakras.
Okay.
I would say the root chakras have a lot to do with like fear, like I guess more fear-based thinking. But again, don't hold me to it. What I would say to you is Google the root chakra and see what comes up. There's probably high side.
I have a little bit, but I was kind of wondering, like, from your perspective of, you know, doing transformational body work. But okay, well, whenever we get a chance to get together and you do it on me, maybe you can kind of like figure it out.
Well, so
walking on me.
I can talk about it from my viewpoint, not the chakras. Is that we're talking about the root chakra? You know, there's some deep meridians in there. The liver channel that runs near there, kind of like can wrap around the genitals. And so I would, my first hit would be there's emotional repression that has to do with
it. Which makes sense based on what I shared
area
with you a little earlier.
So we'll have to work together at some point.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. There was something else I wanted to say. Oh, I saw someone ask a question. Is it okay? I just saw a question someone asked that I can.
Yeah, well, if you want
answer.
to, let me ask you a quick question.
At the end of it,
so Yerasimos,
I think there's a delay going on, so I don't know if.
And then I'll go through and I'll take a look at the questions on here, and we can answer any questions then. Okay.
Okay, cool. There's a little bit of a delay, so I don't know if I'm talking over you at times. It may seem that way, so I apologize to those that are watching.
Yeah. Hey, so just another quick question. What are some books you recommend? So this is, I know we've talked about this book, you know, The Body Keeps the Score. So just for people that want to learn more about this, do you recommend books other than this? Oh, you got the same book.
Yeah, we have the same book. So this is a great book, like you said, by Bessel van der Kolk. He's probably one of the leading voices, leading researchers, scientists that has been working with trauma for, I don't know, 30, 40 years. And it's an excellent book. I recommend. I really love this book. You know, people can't, I don't know if you can read it, but Peter Levine has been working with trauma in the body for 40 years. This is called In an Unspoken Voice, How the Body Releases Trauma and Restores Goodness. Okay. He also wrote a book called Waking the Tiger. And they go really, really deep into the physiological process and of trauma and what happens in the brain. And Peter especially, he studied animals to see how they were operating around trauma. And so he'll go into that and talk about the trembling and quivering and shaking process. That's a natural part of a traumatic experience. And so these are the two main books that I would recommend. And they happen to be like really good friends.
Okay.
So that's what I would recommend.
Okay. Perfect. Cool.
Good start. And then, good starting points.
Yeah, great. Well, I've just, I'm only on about page like 45 or so of this book. There definitely goes into like the scientific part of this, but very interesting. And, I look forward to learning more about this. But even more importantly, I look forward to experiencing it because I'm just fascinated by this. And I can't wait to see, what's kind of like locked up inside of me that's just kind of waiting to come out.
Yeah, I feel you, man. And I'm like, I have such compassion for people for this reason is that like, very often we don't even know what we're not connected to or what we're not experiencing or feeling because it's in our unconscious.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like that idea of like, we don't even know what we don't know. Or we don't know the experience of something until we experience it.
Yes.
And it's that way with the physical body when these things started bubbling up in the surface. And, I experienced it intensely multiple times, like 30, 40 minutes of weeping and heaving. And I don't even know where it was coming from.
Yeah.
So, tackling it from many different angles, talk therapy is important, and getting deep into the body. It's, we're moving in that place now where synergy and taking from different fields is kind of the name of the game. And I like that. I really like that. And
yeah,
I personally try to.
Go on.
Sorry, Christina. Hey, Christina, I just saw what she said. She said root chakra being out of balance has to do with emotional imbalances, relationships being out of balance, and financial stress, not feeling supported and grounded. Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay.
There could be some elements in there.
Thanks for that, Christina.
Cool. Any other questions, anything?
I was going to ask you something and I forgot. It'll come back to me. So, let's go through the questions. And let's see. So Celeste also made a comment. When a person has a strong response after a session with strong emotions that may be scary, anger, fear, etc., what do you recommend they do if they're pretty freaked out and can't deal with it?
Okay, that's a good question. I've yet to experience anyone who has been too freaked out to deal with it. And I think this is the reason why. I think on some level, the body has an intelligence that it's going to allow you, what it's going to help you release or uncover is something that it feels that you're ready to integrate back into your life. That's okay. One way to look at it. Now, I don't want to say that what this person, I don't know if it was a male or female, is asking, I don't want to say that doesn't happen, but I would probably say get support from people that you care about. nurture yourself as much as you can. If you need to go, you talk to someone, to a counselor or a therapist to kind of complement this kind of work. You can do that as well. But most of the time, I haven't experienced anyone that overwhelmingly couldn't deal with it or process it. If that makes any sense.
Well, it makes perfect sense because the body has this innate intelligence, and lots of times it's asleep, due to like all of these distractions or the trauma that you've experienced in life. But once you wake that up, the body truly wants to heal. The body wants to feel good. And I think when you have the help of someone like you, you're giving the body the nudge to help it repair itself. So that kind of makes sense to me. I don't know if it makes sense to you, but that's been my experience in working with people.
Yeah, I agree. And I think as humans, like as an organism, like as we progress through life, there's some process that wants us to heal, that wants us to integrate and become more whole. It just feels that way to me, and what I experience and what I witness. Like even for people who are living a certain way for 15, 20, 30 years, and then there's a hit of intuition or something where they realize on a deeper level, this life or what I'm doing or my relationships or my career just isn't what I want it to be. And so they reach out, hopefully, for support. They continue their education, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the body has an innate intelligence. And what I do love about this work is that, in a sense, we're bypassing the mind and we're going directly into the body.
Okay.
And we're seeing what this, Peter Levine calls it the unspoken voice. What this body has to say.
Yeah.
And
wow, I like that.
Really powerful.
So second part to Celeste's question is, should they make themselves shake as maybe one thing to get it moving if they cannot get back to the practitioner right away or are overwhelmed? So it sounded like you kind of answered that, but let's say somebody does a session with you, they go home and all of a sudden, they have all these feelings. Should they kind of like force themselves to kind of shake and try to let these feelings out?
So 2 things on that. This shaking process that happens is an unconscious process. So it's an automatic process. That being said, I think a person shaking can help, again, in their own way, discharge energy.
Mm-hmm.
If you look back at some of the most indigenous tribes and early people, something that's kind of known as like the original or the initial medicine is these tribes would play these kinds of music and they would just shake. They'd go into these ecstatic shaking and release and work on this, you could say, the subtle energy body. And it helps discharge some of this energy, helps activate the body systems. And it's something that I've experienced and I do, and I sometimes prescribe to people. So I wouldn't hurt.
Yeah.
And shaking, like not in a uniform kind of a good way. Like you're just shaking your whole body and your legs and seeing
so
what
it's
comes
just kind
up.
of chaotic.
A chaotic shake. You don't want to hurt yourself. Like, be mindful of that. But after you do that for 5-10 minutes, you will probably feel, especially shaking your hands and your feet, you will probably feel subtle vibrations of energy that are like tingling sensation on your hands, on your feet. And that's a really big a big thing that people feel during sessions. People feel like energy is just flowing through their body. They feel like electricity is happening. And especially when you combine the body work with the deep breathing.
Okay.
That there's a lot of things that can happen. People sometimes feel their hands close up because, again, these hands and the feet, they're kind of channels of energy that interact with the world outside of them.
Right.
And so it's pretty wild.
Yeah. Cool.
So yes, shake if you can. It could be positive.
So Ginger Marth asks, what kind of tools, such as rollers, balls, etc., do you recommend for working with tissue at home?
Okay, great question. This is something I've kind of been doing intermittently a lot over the years, but I got kind of more in tune to this when I was introduced to the functional patterns training system, and they really have like a really specific routine to like getting through different tissues in the body. And so I like using PVC pipe instead of a roller. I think a roller is too soft, but if you need to start with a roller, you start with a roller. PVC pipe, you can get hard medicine balls on Amazon as well, like those 6-pound, 8-pound, they look like basketballs.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice for leverage, and because it's rounded, you can get into certain spots.
Okay.
Lacrosse balls for the feet, and there's a tool called the Theracane as well, where it has like different points you can kind of get into the psoas area.
So kind of like a roller. Looks like a roller with a bunch of bumps on it.
No, it actually kind of it looks like I don't know, maybe like a candy cane, like that has little nubs on it.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you can like
you
go
can
like this and just kind of pull it.
Yeah, you can get in different areas.
Yeah, those are cool.
And my piece of advice for that is use your intuition and search for the pain. Search for the pain and breathe through it.
Yeah.
You know, because in life, most people don't want to feel pain. But our pain points, I mean, it's kind of cliche, and maybe our pain points are our growth points. So, like sticking with it, sitting with it for a few minutes, breathing through it, and then see what happens when you get up. You'll probably feel a release of stress, more relaxed, more present. So those are good tools to use on your own.
Yeah. Excellent. Let's see what else here. Let's see. So Ryan commented, got up at 6 a.m. today and yesterday to look at the sun break over the horizon. Ryan, good job, buddy.
Love it.
And one of the best things you could do for anyone dealing with adrenal fatigue or just looking to increase their energy. So many benefits. So Ryan, awesome. Keep it up. Carl commented that they're dealing with an uncomfortableness in his gut since he can remember. So any insight into that, Yerasimos?
Well, let's see. Uncomfortableness in his gut. I mean, that can be a lot of different things. I mean, if we're looking at just the large intestine and the small intestine, there's different exercises that a person can do to help open up those energy channels. And again, if I was working with this person, I would probably focus on walking on their arms, because the large intestine and small intestine run through the arms. So that's what I would do. They can look up online, look up large intestine meridian and small intestine meridian, and see if they can get in there with their hands and kind of work out those areas. There can be nutritional, environmental factors that are impacting that as well. So all the stuff all the biohacking and all the things that you talk about, that I'm a big fan of, I think can go a long way. I mean, pretty much get a piece of paper and take a look at, well, if he's a regular listener or a watcher, what are you integrating into your life and what aren't you, and what can you let go of? What's your diet like? Have you tried altering your diet? Are you getting enough sunlight? Are you grounded? Those kinds of things.
Yeah, well, it's funny, Yerasimos, when I read that, just in the context of this discussion, I was thinking of, usually when I talk with people and they have gut issues, it's like indigestion, bloating, gas. But I was thinking of kind of like, like a bad gut feeling, like, like just something in your gut's telling you something's not right. So, Carl, maybe you can put another comment in there and just kind of clarify, because it could mean different things, right? Let's see.
Yeah,
here.
It's true. I mean,
Martha Sanders comments, the electrical patterning of the trauma becomes entrenched and normalized. Unbind the energy of the trauma to reset the pathway. So just kind of
sounds good.
Backs up exactly what you're saying. So Angela asked, does scar tissue block meridians? And if so, how does one clear scar tissue?
Yeah, it does. How does one clear scar tissue? Well, again, with this resistance work that I do, it helps do that. There are other systems out there that I'm sure that help reduce scar tissue. I would say getting after it with different tools as well can impact it. Take a look at, go online, and I know I'm a fan of the functional pattern system. I'm a fan of doing deep body work of different kinds. Use different tools on yourself at home. That's pretty much all I could say. If you came in and we worked together, it'd be a different story, but
okay,
we'd have it's a longer conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Peter Brooks makes a comment, fascinating conversation, guys, reassuring to witness so much consciousness rising. And I wanted to mention that point because Yerasimos, I don't know about you, but it seems like more and more people are waking up, more and more people are showing an interest in self-growth and expanding their own consciousness. Are you seeing that too?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Now again, I do live in Los Angeles and Santa Monica, so it's I would say it's pretty big there. But in general, more people are intrigued by this conversation. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, people would think we were tripping if we were talking about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think people you're right, they're open. They're thirsty and they're hungry for living a certain kind of life. And I have to say, one of the positives of social media and technology is that people have access to so much information, and they can kind of look at their life relative to a global environment, to what's going on outside themselves, that forces them to take a look inward or take a look in the mirror and go, well, what am I doing? Am I happy? Do I really like my career? Am I happy in this relationship? Am I healthy? What can I do to be healthier? So I think people are hungrier. People want this information. People want to live a life filled with joy and happiness and healthy relationships, smiling. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think it's a human birthright to be able to enjoy life. It doesn't mean we're not going to experience difficulties, but these difficulties and these traumatic experiences, when processed, make us more resilient.
Exactly.
And provide wisdom and contribute to our spiritual practice and our life on this planet. So yeah. I agree. I think people are more open. Even just 15 years ago, 10 years ago, eating healthier foods. You've seen the organic market grow, and the things, people going and talking about their problems, or I don't want to say problems, their challenges. And yeah, I love it. I could talk about this all day long.
Yeah,
Health,
yeah, definitely. Yeah,
wellness.
It's a great thing. I love seeing, interest in these things growing. And, you mentioned this in the beginning of our talk, Yerasimos, kind of what got you started on this journey is curiosity. My son's 20 months old. The kid is so curious about everything. So everybody, if everybody kind of reawoke that curiosity that they had as a child, life gets so much better. Life gets so much more interesting. And being curious about, the bad cards that life hands us, that's a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Get curious about the lesson that life is trying to teach you. Trauma is a lesson too. It's not always a fun lesson, but when we take the time to explore it, to learn it, we can really grow. We can go to our next level and experience that much more joy and happiness and satisfaction.
Yeah, well said, Nathan. I agree, and I love that you brought up I love that idea. We're given certain cards to play in this lifetime, and it's up to us to choose how we play those cards, and how we react to our environment and the decisions that we make, and yeah, it's cool stuff. I dig it. I love it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Let's see here. Andrew Jordan, the GVD camera, this is different than the one Ruben was working with. Now, Andrew, it's the same one that Ruben Salinas has. And she asked, in your sessions, is the goal to elicit more physical pain and in turn releasing that emotional pain?
Well, I wouldn't say I don't really have a goal going into a session except like using these tools and these techniques and then guiding a person to breathe relative to what they're feeling and see what happens, at least for that one modality. And I don't want someone to have, I'm not like forcing people and like yelling at them and going, come on, no pain, no gain. Like, no, that doesn't kind of work in a healing environment, because people who have been traumatized, like, they need safety and space and, you know, softness. So pain isn't, we want to push a person to their edge and maybe a little bit past it, but without like having a person like screaming and yelling. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's kind of like pushing people to the edge of their comfort zone, maybe just a little bit outside of that, but not so far outside of it that you're creating more trauma in their life instead of helping them get rid of the trauma in their life.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. So let's see. Sophie Fletcher shares a quote from Robert Ramanishan. You know him? But the body remembers what is too painful for the mind to remember, but too important to forget. Very cool quote. I'll have to think on that one a little bit. There's a lot in there.
Well, Sophie's my fiance, and she's brilliant.
Okay.
And she's getting her, she's currently working on her dissertation, and she's working on she's getting her PhD in depth psychology with an emphasis on somatic studies. So depth psychology is the study of the unconscious with an emphasis on somatic studies. So in a sense, looking at the body as the unconscious. So, okay. So she's amazing, and we kind of work together and support each other. And yeah, it's an amazing quote, and it hits the nail it hits the nail on the head that our mind may, you know, like, okay, I need to survive in my family system, or I need to function in the world. I'm going to just, well, it's not even a conscious choice very often. Like, there can be a repressed memory, but that body holds on to it because it knows how important it is. Right. It knows how important it is to a hopefully future healing and integration process.
Yeah. Very powerful. And you know what else I love? Like, a lot of these modalities have been around for a long time. And I love how now we have the science to kind of explain it, because I'm definitely kind of a sciencey kind of guy. I always want to know like the why behind it. You know, like when I hear something that sounds like really woo woo, I'm interested, but I'm like, okay, where's the science that explains this? So I love how today we have, you know, people doing research to really demonstrate and prove that this stuff works, and this is why this stuff works. So what a great combo. You've got, you know, you doing the work, and then your fiance doing the research behind it too. So very, very interesting.
Yeah, and you know, it's cool because we actually plan on integrating all these different things we've learned to kind of create like a system to help people with mental, emotional, physical, spiritual transformation, and hold workshops in the future.
Oh, excellent.
People get to experience this kind of work like throughout like all day and all night, and in the setting of a community, because I think going through these experiences and being witnessed is a really powerful aspect of the healing process, and sharing also anything that comes of this. So I'm really looking forward to that, you know, next stage in our evolution. And yeah, she's absolutely incredible. So
yeah. Well, I mean, that sounds like a lot of fun, like to do with my significant other, and to kind of, you know, go through that growing experience together. And, you know, maybe we'll be like laying on the ground crying and holding each other. But yeah, it sounds definitely very, very fascinating. I can't wait to hear more about that.
Yeah. No, I love that you said that, because it's definitely powerful work when couples, whatever it is, grow and explore things together. And I work with some couples, so it's kind of nice.
Yeah. Let's see what other comments we have here. Ginger Marth says, she's got her PVC pipe right there. Cool. Let's see. Ryan Gavlik. Love that. It's crazy how we normalize feelings of stress and tension. Most people have no idea how good the body is designed to feel. A little rollout session every day can change your life. So Ryan actually did like a great Facebook Live with me where he shared some of his favorite workouts to do that stuff. So check that out. And
I agree.
Angela,
Ryan, definitely.
What's that?
No, I was just saying, I saw his comment and I said, we'll definitely get back together. We'll get together when I'm back in California.
Yeah, cool. You guys are going to love each other. Angela wants to know the books. So one is The Body Keeps the Score. Mm-hmm. Bessel van der Kolk. And Yerasimos, what is the other book that you recommended?
The other book is In an Unspoken Voice by Peter Levine. He also has another book called Waking the Tiger, I believe is the name of it, and I'm sure he's written other ones as well.
Okay.
I really like this one.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's see. Anastasia, what suggestions do you have for self-care for a person who is actively going through an unavoidable trauma to prevent it from staying stuck in the body?
Let me see that one. Suggestions. The first thing that comes to me is feel your feelings. Create space for yourself to feel your feelings. Don't numb them, if possible. I know there's some instances in life where you have to turn to certain things because it can be overwhelming. But whenever you can, allow yourself to feel the feelings. And if you feel your body kind of shivering or shaking, allow it to go through that process, because it's not gonna stay like that forever. So that would be my advice.
Okay. Excellent.
And again, people can connect with me on Facebook. If they have any follow-up questions, they can reach out for sure, and I'll do my best to answer them.
Great. Yeah. So if you guys are catching the replay, leave your questions. Yerasimos will come back. He'll take a look. So where can people find you, Yerasimos, other than Facebook? So connect with Yerasimos on Facebook if you like his stuff.
Yeah, you can connect with me on here. I have an Instagram page called @HealingWithYerasimos, or Yerasimos, depends on how you pronounce it, where I post, I'll post some things around health, and I'll share things about, my day, whatever. That's a good place too. And then email, healingwithyerasimos@gmail.com. And then I have a very basic introductory website, which is healingwithyerasimos.com.
Okay.
So those are the main areas.
And if people want to work with you one-on-one, so you're based out of LA right now, but you travel around to different parts of the world to meet with clients. So where are those other parts that you go to?
So right now, my base clientele is in Santa Monica, LA area. I also have a clientele in New York City, so I'm in New York. My goal is to end up going at least a couple times a year. Phoenix, Scottsdale area as well. I have some clients there. I go and I visit one of my dearest friends, Jesse, who lives out there, and he's a Wim Hof practitioner. So we get into some deep breathing and cold therapy.
Oh, awesome! I love it. Talking my language.
That's awesome. And I have some clients in England right now, and potentially in Switzerland, where I am here right now. So it's tough. If a person, if someone reaches out to me and is really curious and can, I would say, get some people on board to get sessions, I'm willing to travel to a place, but we'd have to talk about and work that out, and have a talk and a conversation. And there's obviously the whole, the financial element of that as well. But those are the main areas. If I'm in Phoenix or Arizona, or someone lives in Phoenix or Arizona, hit me up and I'll add you to my list to connect with you when I'm coming out there. Pay attention on Facebook or Instagram, where I let people know if I'm heading somewhere. and we can schedule something. New York, and I'd like to start going to more places. So we'll see.
Awesome.
I got to make it to Ithaca.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Well, you know, it's a beautiful place to visit, especially in the summertime. We've got over 100 waterfalls within a 10-mile square radius of town. So lots of cool stuff I could show you. But Yerasimos, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I loved learning this, and I'm very intrigued. I can't wait to try it. If you guys got value out of this, please share it so you can give your friends value and expose them to this transformational bodywork. Very interesting. So let's see if there's any last minute comments. Christina says, come to Seattle. And Ginger's in Arizona. She'll be in touch. So so there you go.
Cool. I've actually been wanting to go back to Seattle, and if I can't really see it, I'm assuming it's my old friend Christina. We go way back to my first acting class in New York City.
Christina Nafasi. Hopefully,
yeah, she's amazing, and it's nice to stay connected on here, Christina.
Cool.
And Ginger, I will hit you up when I'm in Arizona. Send me an email, and I'll put you on a list. And yeah, it'd be great to connect. And Angela, Atlanta. Yeah, I'm down. We'll see what happens.
Cool. Hey, well, thanks again. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, Nathan. It's so great to talk with you. I hope we could do it again sometime.
Definitely.
All right, cool. Take care.
Hey, enjoy Switzerland. I'll see you.
I will for sure. Take care, everyone. Bye.